What's up guys, it's Chris here. Just 3 years ago, I was making less than 150 Rand a month from my investing portfolio on EasyEquities, and today I am making around 1600 Rand every month, 19,000 Rand a year, and a total of 50,000 Rand in passive income and dividends so far. So in today's episode, I'm going to show you how I went from practically zero all the way up to 5 figures a year, including every single share, ETF, and unit trust I bought, how much I own, and what dividend percentages each of them are paying right now, so that maybe you can consider it for growing your own portfolio. And at the end of the video, I'll take you through how close I am to financially retiring completely. So let's get started. Okay, so before we get going, please be sure to hit the like button below. It really means a lot, and if you're new, you can subscribe to the channel to see more stuff like this. Now, I have a couple of different investments and a side hustle that brings in income, but today we're going to focus specifically on my EasyEquities portfolio and the passive income that I receive from investing in the market in things like stocks, ETFs, and unit trusts. So what exactly is passive income? Well, it means income that you don't have to work for. It's income that comes into your bank account regardless. It means you can go to sleep and wake up in the morning having done nothing, and you will still be making money. And I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like the dream, and it gives you flexibility in life to focus on what's important to you. And that could be your family, kids, running your own business, or traveling the world. And speaking of that, we just took a trip recently where we climbed to the top of the Magaliesberg Mountains near the cradle of humankind. We hiked up about 1.6 kilometers in elevation and climbed some pretty steep ladders to get to the top, which was a really great feeling. And I always think to myself that if I could spend my days earning passive income and doing things like that, I would be a pretty happy guy. So that's why a few years ago I started my journey in investing to grow my passive income, move myself closer to financial retirement, and I'm still on that journey today. But what was it that took me from just a few $100 in income to tens of thousands of rands a year on EasyEquities? Well, let's take a look. If you don't know already, on this channel I show you everything. All of the rands and cents, the profits and losses, so that you can follow the journey to learn from both the wins and the losses. And this right here, this is my full income statement for the year of 2020, from March all the way to February 2021. And in terms of my EasyEquities dividend income, I'm at a grand total of 1,717 Rand and 75 cents for a whole year. Now keep in mind, in 2019 and 2021, I made around 3,900 Rand for the year. So COVID of course had an effect on dividends, but either way, none of this was too impressive. And speaking of not impressive, let me show you something. This is my investment income going back to 2012. But keep in mind that this is including interest income from cash as well as some other investments that weren't stocks or EasyEquities, which were a few thousand. And that makes it even worse to see income like 800 Rand a year. This is actually my investing budget in 2016, where I paid more for bank fees and my F&B investing platform at the time than I got in dividend income. So I was basically making a loss that year. Now skip ahead a few years to where I made 30,000 Rand in passive income profit last year, and now in September, just 3 quarters in the year, I have already surpassed that with a budgeted 50,000 Rand of passive income profit by December. So what changed? Well, there were a few things, so let's get into it and then I'll show you a full breakdown of my entire portfolio. Number 1, the first thing I did was I started to put away as much money as I could. I worked through my household budget and I reduced certain areas. I also looked at ways to save money in my everyday life, like groceries, or being mindful about how much I was going out, or changing from one brand to a cheaper one, and using the reward points like Vitality or eBucks or Pick n Pay Smart Shopper, and using those points to buy things instead of cash. Also, for years, including up to today, any kind of bonus or 13th check was immediately put straight away into a separate savings account. I did whatever I could to make sure less rands left my account every month, and whatever I was left with at the end of the month, I put towards my investing. Number 2, the second thing I did was I started learning. Investing is great, but the better you can invest, the better your returns will be. So I read plenty of books, like you can see here. And I went through a lot of online articles and I followed good YouTube channels of people talking about investing. So again, if you haven't already, you're welcome to subscribe here. And I also learned by doing. I tried things and I invested, and sometimes I won and sometimes I lost, but over time I learned what works for me and my portfolio, and that was incredibly helpful. And trust me, there were mistakes along the way. And that's why I share everything I do here, because if you can learn from my mistakes before you make them, then maybe it will save you a bit of time and money. And if I win here, then you have an idea of what might be working. And just a quick moment to mention that on this channel, we have a casual cash club where you can join for just $3, and it gives you immediate access to our Patreon, where I post my income breakdown at the end of every month, along with portfolio updates, all of my buys and sells, tips and tricks for investing, and some spreadsheets that will help you track your financial retirement journey. So if you want to get access to all the 36 posts, you can join the club in the link below. Number 3, this is a simple one, but sometimes the hardest. I started investing. All of the money that I was saving and that I was squirreling away, I started to invest it in the market. And I was investing in what I thought was best at the time. And some worked and some didn't. But that was okay, because the most important thing was that I was starting to build a portfolio, and with it a passive income. One mistake that I can tell you now in this process is that when I started out, I was too quick to sell when markets moved. As soon as a share did badly, I would sell. And the problem with that is that you have the best chance of making money and the lowest chance of losing money the longer you hold. And as long as you have chosen solid long-term companies or ETFs, often the best thing to do is to continue to buy into the shares with smaller amounts over time and grow it and hold it over the long term. And if you don't believe me, well, here's some proof. This was my portfolio in September 2012. And as you can see, there was a small loss. All of those shares I sold at one point or another, but I've recreated that exact portfolio in Simply Wall Street, and if I had held those exact shares until now, from 6,000 Rand, I would have made 9,300 Rand in capital gain, 3,200 Rand in dividends, and a total return amount of 18,500 Rand, not to mention a 554% gain on just Naspers alone. And those admittedly were not even the best stocks I could have bought. But it is amazing how just holding over time improves your odds to make a great return. Then number 4, and the last one before we get to my portfolio, was that I reinvested my dividends. Now this is optional, because you can just as easily use your dividends for whatever you want in life. I mean, that's what they're there for, right? But if you have a good month, or you don't need the income at the time, or even if you just reinvest a portion, like 50% of what you receive, reinvesting your dividends is a way to supercharge your portfolio growth, because obviously the more you invest, the more income you get. So maybe every second dividend or half of everything you receive, you can reinvest. Something like that. It's not necessary, but it's a tool I'd often use to grow my income. But don't get me wrong, I also did withdraw, sometimes to use for some fun as well. Okay guys, that's it. Let's get to the portfolio and the income. So this right here, on the screen, is my EasyEquities portfolio. And after all of the saving and investing and reinvesting over the years, I have built it up to around 232,000 Rand, and I have it split between South Africa, the United States in red, and the United Kingdom in blue. Now in a later video, we'll go through all of the shares and why I own them, but for now, let's look at the income. So first we have the small index funds, which I have invested in mostly for the share price growth, as top index funds typically have good share growth over the long term. But all of these will also have a small dividend income, because they are ETFs made up of the largest companies in those countries, and as you know, many of those will pay dividends. So here we have the S&P 500 from America that I have a total of 9,200 Rand in. I have shares in Rands for the core shares and in dollars for the Vanguard. This pays around 1.5% in dividends, so I'm getting around 140 Rand a year. Then the Satrix 40, which is the South African index, I have a small amount of 2,000 Rand and it pays 3.3%, so I'm receiving around 70 Rand a year. Next, our Eurostoxx 50, which is the 50 largest companies in Europe, and again with around 2,000 invested, it pays about 3.8%, which is 80 Rand a year. And the highest percentage index fund is the FTSE 100 from the UK that is paying 3.84%. So with my 4,400 Rand invested in Rands and Pounds, I receive about 170 Rand a year. But again, I keep these mostly just for capital growth, So let's get to some larger amounts. Let's go to my UK portfolio, then the US, and finish off with SA, which is my highest paying portfolio. Here we have got two companies with around 6,300 Rand invested, which are HSBC and Lloyds Bank, both finance companies, with HSBC paying 5.8% dividends and Lloyds paying 6.1%, so we are receiving dividends of 368 Rand for HSBC and 388 from Lloyds. Then we have SSE, which is a UK-based renewable energy company similar to our Eskom, except it actually works and it generates power from solar, wind and hydro sources. I have 13,000 Rand invested here and they are paying 6% dividends, so that's 800 Rand a year from them and 1,800 a year from my total UK portfolio, including the index funds. Next, onto the USA portfolio. Here we have got two companies and three ETFs. The two companies are Simon Property Group and Realty Income. Now let's quickly talk about property companies, because as interest rates are so high, property companies' share prices will struggle. The reason is that most real estate companies will have a high amount of debt to fund their properties, with most at around 30 to 50% of their asset value in debt, which is also called gearing. So as interest rates rise, so too does the expenses of a portion of their debt, and you can see that drop very clearly on both of their graphs from here onwards in 2022. So why then am I investing in them? Well, the reason is twofold. Firstly, because I've found that investing in companies with good long-term growth during a down period can have some good long-term results. As investors, ideally you always want to invest at the bottom and have it rise in price. That part is simple. So I am buying in now, knowing that prices might still go down further, but that when interest rates start to reverse, I might be able to get some good share price gains. And secondly is that dividend yields are very nice and high right now because the share price is lower. So here we can see dividend yields on these companies of 5.6 and 6.6%, when in the past they were around 3%. So it seems like a good deal, both in share price and dividends, but just remember to keep that in mind if you do decide on property companies at this time, that it is possible to still see some downward movements in the share price for the short term. Okay, but here we have 10,200 invested in Realty Income, and I have been adding to this where I can, and at 5.6% we are getting 572 Rand a year, and dividends are paid monthly. Then Simon Property Group, I have 16,400 Rand invested and I'm receiving around 1,100 Rand a year at 6.6% dividends. Then I have the Schwab US Dividend ETF, a collection of secure and high-paying companies in the US, and they pay 3.5% with good share price and dividend growth over the long term. So with 11,000 invested, we make around 400 Rand a year. Lastly, for the US are our two call option ETFs, the Global X Nasdaq 100 and the JP Morgan Premium Income. These pay about 9.7% a year and they both pay dividends monthly. So with around 8,000 Rand each, we get around 770 Rand each on these. Meaning that our total USA income, including index funds, is 3,750 Rand a year. But our South African portfolio blows these amounts out of the water with a total of 13,500 Rand a year. The smaller ones are our banks. We have shares in FNB, Standard Bank and Nedbank. We've invested in the same amounts, but they have grown differently over the year, so you can see the amounts from 6,000 to 8,000 Rand with dividends of 5.3 to 8.4% and income from 400 Rand to 600 Rand a year. But we make a total income from the three of 1,600 Rand a year. Sanlam, we have 10,000 Rand at 5.4%, so we're making 550 Rand a year. So every dividend after this is over 9%. Starting with Fairvest, where we invested 7,300 Rand with a 9.2% dividend, here we are making 672 Rand a year. Then Store Age Property, another property company declining with the interest rates like we mentioned earlier, but again the dividends are actually outweighing that at 9.4% a year. I should be adding more to this share recently, but because I have 17,500 Rand invested, I'm choosing to rather top up my USA property shares. But Store Age is paying an awesome 1,650 Rand a year in dividends. I then own two unit trusts. The Prescient Income Provider, which pays you monthly income at 8.2% a year. So with 25,000 Rand here, I am making a bit over 2,000 Rand a year. and the other is the Coronation Strategic Income Fund, paying an incredible 9.92% dividends, and for a low-risk unit trust, that is an incredible return, so much so that with 20,000 Rand, it is also paying just over 2,000 Rand a year and pays every 3 months. And lastly, my single highest dividend paying company is what's known as the mystery share on this channel. Now, I'm not withholding this because of spite or anything, it's just because I work with this company personally in the real world, and because it is a listed company, I want to be careful not to share any information on it. So I'm sorry about that, but here I have 31,600 Rand invested, and with a 15.3% dividend yield, it is currently paying out just nearly 5,000 Rand a year. So that means that the combination of all of our EasyEquities dividends comes to a total passive income every year of around 19,000 Rand. And again, this is passive income, so no matter what I do, whether I'm asleep or awake, this should be coming into my bank account and also growing each year as the company's dividends grow as well. And of course, I'm going to keep adding to it over time. But if you want to see how some of my other investments and side hustles bring me to 50,000 Rand a year, then subscribe to the channel because I'll be putting that video out soon as well. But guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you found this helpful for your finance and investing journey. And if you did appreciate a video like this, please hit the like button so more people can see it. And if you have any questions or thoughts on the portfolio, I try to reply to all the comments below or in one-on-one messages on the Casual Cash Club. But until then, I'll see you guys next time, as always, on Casual Cash. Cheers.